Okay, here we go. Second attempt here. Second video. Um, Back at it. So, Emergency Measures Act, invoked by Justin Trudeau and the Liberal federal government here in Canada to quell and stop the Freedom Convoy 2022, as well as all of the other associated convoys and protests. There's a reason why I say that. So, if you're new here, new to me, my name is Andrew. Just figuring stuff out here, playing around. Production quality is not going to be the absolute best, but I'm hoping that it's a little bit raw and that can connect with some people. Changing up from what the legacy media and politicians tend to do. I actually kind of want to talk with you guys. So if you disagree, if you feel a little bit different, if you think I missed something, just comment, let me know. And I genuinely am trying to do the best job here that I can and be as even, unbiased, and as careful as possible. So what are we doing right now? We're watching the live stream. This is Ottawalks. He's got a great channel. He's been doing live streams throughout the entire protest in Ottawa. He's probably one of the best. If you can, go subscribe to him, check out his content, and verify what I'm saying here. So what I said earlier was the Emergencies Act was put in place to stop the protest, and to me, I think it is it's unnecessary. It's quite an overreach. The last time that the Emergency Measures Act came in place in Canada, interestingly enough, was called for by Justin's dad, Pierre Trudeau, in 1970 to stop the FLQ. They were a terrorist group that legitimately killed politicians, legitimately put bombs in Parliament. So, yes, actually harming, actually trying to murder, actually trying to terrorize the population. That is very, very different from this. You can see it right now, right? Pretty orderly, pretty clean, pretty calm. People are out here walking their dogs. So make your own opinions, form what you want. But I just wanted to come out and speak a little bit about my own confusion, if you will. Why do I watch the live streams and see one thing, then listen to the politicians, listen to the legacy media in Canada, and hear something that's completely different, right? So we can watch this. All right? Sure. Take from it what you will. Now let's go over here. On Monday, Mendocino described some of the scenes that have played out on Wellington Street in recent days as completely lawless. This might not be Wellington Street. It may very well be Wellington Street. Where is the lawlessness? I would really like to see the source on that. Show me a video of it. Let's verify it. Let's have other people corroborate that source and say, yep, it's true. How do you know it's true? Well, I have a video of it from a different angle. Right? I would really like to see the actual violence here instead of people just kind of telling me, oh, yeah, they're getting violent. Another big aspect here is that, to my understanding, these are all different convoys, okay? So they're not all linked together as one. The Freedom Convoy 2022 that's in Ottawa that we're watching right now is the main protest. There are three main organizers, Tamara, I can't remember her last name, and then there's another gentleman who's been doing most of the interviews. Viva Frey did a fantastic interview with him yesterday, February 14th. Go to Viva Frey's channel, subscribe to him, like his stuff, and really check out his content. He's, I would say, probably the best one. It's covering the entirety of this protest. Plus, he's a lawyer, so he does really know what he's talking about. He goes and he speaks with the organizer of the Ottawa protest. And that gentleman made a distinction that all of these are different. So the one in Windsor at the Ambassador Bridge, that would be a separate blockade, a separate protest. Coutts in Alberta at the border there, separate. And the one in Alberta that's at Coutts could even be different from the protesters that are outside the legislature in Edmonton, Alberta. So there is organization, but it is in the individual cells. And I don't think that there's been a distinction between or from the politicians, right? Or legacy media. They seem to kind of just be rolling this all into one, which I don't think helps the narrative or helps understanding or really helps people accurately form their own consensus on what's really going on here. So, how did this all kind of start? Well, Canada's had very, very strict COVID-19 restrictions, mandates that were enforced federally and then undertaken by each province by themselves. So Quebec has been pretty crazy, in my opinion. They had a curfew from 8 a.m. to 5 a.m. on top of masking, social distancing, lockdowns, other variations of restrictions. Here in Alberta, where I live, we had QR codes. So you had to get a certain amount or a certain number of doses of the COVID-19 vaccine that would then be logged into your Health Alberta Health record. And then you would present that at restaurants, events, shopping malls, wherever, where they would scan the QR code and you would get a little green thumbs up that says, yep, you're approved to come in here. So it really was, in my opinion, a show your papers to gain access type of situation. Interestingly enough, and this is another thing that I've been slightly confused about, is I got the opinion, or I got the feeling that most Canadians agreed with this, that they felt that the restrictions were justified or were a justified measure in dealing with the pandemic. So then they started breaking this down even more because they wanted to make it seem, in my opinion, like they were doing something effective against COVID. I'm kind of jumping ahead here, but anyways, the federal government implemented the same vaccine passport, so the QR code, federally to truckers who generally work alone and drive over the border from the United States into Canada, where there is quite a big difference in the percentage of people that are vaccinated. In Canada, it's 90% of the eligible people are vaccinated. My understanding is in the United States, it's anywhere from like 50 to 60%. So these truck drivers that work alone didn't see a reason as to why this QR code needed to be implemented for them to cross the border. I would agree with that. It definitely did seem like political theater. If they had already been submitting PCR tests saying that they were negative, why would they have to show you their vaccination status? If they're negative coming across the border, they're by themselves, why do they have to be vaccinated? That's a really good question. So I would tend to assume that this kind of falls in line with authoritarian social order. Just the same is the same way that a GPS tracks where you go around, and there are CCTV cameras that catch you at a red light infraction. A social credit system would track you personally and basically allow you or limit you from doing a variety of things while you're in your own country, whether you're a citizen of that country or not. And this can become fairly subjective. To who? Well, whoever is in charge. So I think the truckers stepped back, and this has grown into much more of a populist uprising, but they stepped back and I think they just said, no, enough is enough. This is pointless. And even if the government isn't trying to usher us into a more authoritarian system of tracking, tracing, and databasing, then this still feels like overreach, even if they're not trying to usher us into a new form of free society, which I do believe is part of Justin Trudeau's motives. I don't know that, can't prove it, but I certainly would think that with his rhetoric towards these truckers in the way that he's been speaking about them, which is generally very negative. If you want, go and check out the clips yourself. I'm sure they're very accessible, but he essentially says, on top of many other things, that it is an unacceptable viewpoint for these truckers to say, we are done with the QR codes, we are done with the vaccine passport, and we're done with the mask mandates. That's at least what the Convoy in Ottawa wants to get repealed. Or, to be totally honest, I would see it as having your freedoms in alignment with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms reinstated. So that's different from the Coots border crossing. That's different from the Ambassador Bridge in Windsor. And I think that distinction needs to be made. So who are the organizers? Who is the leadership for each one of these convoys? Maybe you want to talk to them. And maybe if you make a distinction, you can figure out who is really serious and who is not so serious. Who is there to make a collaborative effort in coming to an agreement, and who's there to just try and bully people and cause a ruckus, right? So that's one thing that I thought was really, really important. So we've been watching this live stream the whole time while I've been talking. He's walking around Ottawa. Yeah, of course, it's the middle of the day, and the Emergency Measures Act is in place, so maybe that discouraged some people. But I mean, it looks rather peaceful to me. Again, if you disagree, if you find other examples of the violence, please send it my way. I'm really just trying to figure this out. I will put it out there. So the reason why I say there's a disconnect is we come over, which one was it? Must be this one. Yep. We come over and we start reading some of these news articles. And right here, this line, this paragraph, on Monday, Mendocino described some of the scenes that have played out on Wellington Street in Ottawa in the recent days as completely lawless. It's this one right here. I finally highlighted it. There, completely lawless. Please show me the examples of the lawlessness, and let's have that verified, and let's have that come from credible sources, meaning that there's more than one person corroborating that it is true. We have more than one camera angle, more than one video, more than just one person saying, yeah, this stuff happened. Because I don't get it. This is one thing that I'm very confused about. Throughout university, they always said you need 3 credible scholarly sources no matter what. And it's really easy to verify if they're credible and scholarly or not. So why is legacy media not held to the same standards? I scroll down, I don't get any, this is the bottom of the article. There's no sources posted. When I did an internship with CTV in 2021, I did add sources to many of my news articles, but that never seemed to be the focus. And it was a bit of a fast-paced environment, so I didn't feel like I got to absorb or ask maybe the proper questions that I wanted to. But it's an interesting point, isn't it? So we invoke the Emergency Measures Act. The military may or may not be called in. And again, go back and look at the 1970 incident with the FLQ when Pierre Trudeau was in office, and we had called in the War Measures Act, as it was called at the time. It's another interesting thing that Canada likes to do. They add very soft and, in my opinion, open for interpretation. They are vague titles. So another one is we have, can't exactly remember what bill it is, but we call it price management. In the United States, they call it price fixing. In Canada, we call it price management. Just an interesting little vague distinction there. We changed the War Measures Act to Emergencies Act. Makes it sound a little bit nicer. So that's another interesting aspect to look into here. But I see a bit of a disconnect. I think it's important that we distinguish the protests and see that there is a difference between all of them. And I think it is important to compare the last time the War Measures Act was put into place and compare it to today with the Emergencies Act being put in place. What are the differences? What are the similarities? If you find anything that is inconsistent, if you don't like what I've said, if you disagree, you have a comment, you would like to enlighten me a little bit, please drop a comment. Let me know where I went wrong. I'm just trying to figure all this stuff out. And I'm sure that there are some people that are just as curious, maybe even just as confused as me. We're just trying to figure this stuff out. Maybe having these types of conversations is going to assist that a little bit. All right. Thank you, guys. I'll have an update for you hopefully either tomorrow or in the next couple of days, depending on how things go. I'm just going to keep trying to absorb as much knowledge as possible. So if I find a point where I think, oh, this is a good video, I'll come out and make one. But I really appreciate you guys if you are checking these out, if you're deciding to support, and always go follow the people that we're watching the live streams from. This is Otto Walks. He's been doing a fantastic job freezing his butt off the last 3 weeks now. So always give those guys some love and support. All right, signing off for now. See you next time.